All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going all in on Michael Jackson.
Wow. Yeah. This is gonna be big. I mean, the stuff you sent me, this is some deep stuff.
For sure. Our listener sent us, well, it's mostly an essay about Michael Jackson's life, his whole career, the ups and downs, all of it. So, when you think Michael Jackson, what comes to mind first?
Oh man. Like for most people, right? King of Pop, the Moonwalk, Thriller, that whole era.
Exactly, that's the image, right? But this deep dive, I think it's going to surprise some people. There's a lot more to the story. This essay, it starts way back with him as a little kid.
Yeah, it really paints this picture of not just little Michael with the Jackson 5, but like the pressure, the intensity of the music industry on a kid that young. I mean, can you imagine?
5 years old.
Yeah.
Five. When I was five, I think I was still figuring out how to tie my shoes. To be performing on stage at that age,
Yeah.
it's wild.
And this essay, it doesn't shy away from the role of his father, Joseph. I mean, a musician himself, so you know he had that drive, but it sounds like he pushed those kids hard.
Yeah, I was reading about that, demanding perfection, all that. That's got to be tough, right? Not just on Michael, but the whole family.
It kind of makes you wonder, was it more of a manager-artist relationship rather than a typical father-son thing?
From what the essay says, yeah, I'd say so. There's this undercurrent of, like, the intensity was there for sure,
Yeah.
fueled their success probably, but at what cost, The family dynamics, Michael's childhood.
It's interesting, though, there's this bit about Diana Ross taking the family in when they first got to LA. Like, she kind of became a mentor figure for them.
Oh, absolutely. For young Michael especially, that must have been huge, right? And having that connection to Diana Ross, talk about a foot in the door. That's like a direct line to the heart of the music industry.
No kidding. It's like, even with that support, go to be there. His
Yeah.
first solo hit, he's 13 years old. That's crazy. I mean, at that age, most kids are worried about like homework and what their friends think. It's mind blowing, right? And you listen to those early albums, Ben, Off the Wall, you can hear that talent for sure, but also like he's evolving. It's not just that bubblegum pop anymore. You can almost hear those hints of like the musical genius he's going to become.
It's like, for those of us who know his whole discography, it's almost like a secret handshake, you know? Like, here's Michael before Thriller blew everything up.
Exactly. It's a glimpse into that artistic development. But even with the success the essay mentions, there were already some like tensions brewing, the family wanting more creative control, fair financial deals with Motown. They weren't content to just, perform. They wanted ownership.
That's interesting because it almost foreshadows like some of the battles Michael would have throughout his career, right? The artist versus the industry, that push and pull.
For sure. But then, boom, Thriller drops. And it's not just an album, it's this like cultural earthquake. And what's cool is the essay ties it to MTV starting to take off. Michael wasn't just making music, he was making these visual experiences.
Yeah, his videos, they weren't just promotions, they were events, like mini movies. And he changed the game for everyone after that. He got the power of visuals, like way before most people.
He was a visionary for sure, blending music, dance, storytelling like nobody had done before. And then, I mean, come on, 8 Grammys in one night, 1984, that just cemented it, right? Icon status for sure.
Hard to top that, even today. But then, and this is where things get kind of, I don't know, complicated. There's the Pepsi commercial incident. He gets burned pretty badly.
Yeah, it's like this crack in the perfect image, and the essay brings up, it kind of introduces this whole discussion of plastic surgery, which becomes this huge part of his public image, his struggles too.
It makes you wonder, did that incident spark something, some deeper insecurity, or was it already there?
Hard to say for sure, but it definitely casts a shadow over the rest of his story.
And speaking of shadows, let's talk about Neverland. This amazing fantasy world, right?
Mhm.
Rides, animals. Like he built his own escape from all the pressure.
It's like Neverland itself embodies that duality,
Hmm.
the childlike wonder, but also the need to retreat. And like the essay points out, it becomes the central point for the accusations that change everything.
We're talking about the child molestation allegations. I
Mhm.
mean, we can't talk about Michael without addressing that. And I thought it was interesting how the essay handles it, not taking sides, but showing how those allegations, true or not, that's when his image, it changed forever.
Yeah, and you got to remember, this is all happening when racial tensions in the U.S. are really high. The essay suggests that some people were questioning, Michael with his changing appearance. Neverland, was he distancing himself from his Black identity?
It's like even We Are the World, this amazing act of philanthropy, it gets viewed through this lens of race and his changing persona. Every move he made was under a microscope.
It's crazy, right? Every decision scrutinized, debated, talk about pressure.
And then It's almost like this downward spiral, right? The later albums don't sell as well. Incidents like the baby over the balcony, it all adds up to this tarnished image. It's kind of Shakespearean almost.
It's hard not to see it that way, especially compared to the peak of Thriller. But even with all of that, there are these glimmers of hope, you know?
Yeah, like the 2004 trial, he's acquitted. And even though he's facing financial problems, has to sell Neverland, he's still planning this huge comeback tour. Makes you wonder, did he believe he could get back to the top?
There's this, almost desperate hopefulness in those final years, and then boom, sudden death. Shock the whole world. Accidental homicide, the doctor, the medications.
It makes you think back to that Pepsi incident, the burns maybe that started him on painkillers. It's all so sad. You gotta wonder, what was he really searching for his whole life?
Man, that's a question that's going to keep people thinking for years to come, I think.
Oh, before we move on, there's one more thing from the essay we gotta touch on. The Prince of Bahrain. What's that all about?
Oh man, this is a weird one. The Prince, huge Michael fan, bankrolls him when he's struggling. They even work on a song together, like something out of a movie.
A prince coming to the rescue. Sounds like a fairy tale, but I'm guessing it didn't end that way.
Sadly, no. Things go sour. The Prince accuses Michael of being a con man, breaking their agreement. It's messy.
Wow, so even in his personal life, this push and pull, generosity and conflict, it's everywhere.
It's another layer to an already complex story. Behind all the headlines, the music, there was a real person there, flaws, vulnerabilities, trying to figure it all out.
Man, we've got a lot to unpack here. In part two, we're going to dive deeper into the music, the complexities of his life, and the legacy he left behind. Stick with us. All right, so we're back and still diving deep into the world of Michael Jackson. Prepping for this, what really hit me was, his influence, it goes way beyond just music, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The essay, it calls him the king of pop, and they weren't messing around with that title.
Not at all. I mean, think about it. Music videos, he revolutionized them. Blended genres like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Created this sound that's instantly recognizable. Even today, you hear it everywhere.
Everywhere. Usher, Bruno Mars, The Weeknd. So many artists, they all owe something to what Michael did, especially with Thriller. That wasn't just an album, it was a whole experience.
Totally. The dancing, the story, the visuals, it was all connected and it was brand new.
Yeah.
That's got to be part of why he became such an icon, right?
I think so. But what's interesting is how the essay talks about his personal life. It almost becomes this inseparable thing from his public image. And that's where things get tricky.
Yeah, you had the eccentricities, Neverland, the plastic surgery. It was all over the tabloids, right?
Yeah.
Hard to ignore.
It's true. And it makes it hard sometimes to separate the art from the artist. You might love the music, but then you got to deal with the baggage, the controversies.
It's almost like there were two Michael Jacksons, right?
Oh.
The genius musician and then this troubled soul. How do you think he dealt with those two sides of himself?
Wow, that's a good question. The essay suggests that those two sides were always there, kind of intertwined, and it goes back to that tough childhood. All that pressure from his dad, from the world. It's got to leave a mark.
There's this line in the essay that really stuck with me. It's about him wanting to, recapture a lost innocence. It seems like he was always searching for that, even while making this incredible music.
And Neverland was part of that, right? His escape, a way to be a kid again. But then, like we talked about, that's where the accusations come in. It's this, I don't know, heartbreaking contradiction almost.
Yeah, really heartbreaking. He was a victim of abuse, and then he's accused of the same thing. Just tragic on so many levels.
The court cases, the media, it all took such a toll. And you can see the impact on his career, especially after those 93 allegations.
The essay talks about a decline in the music, the sales, everything. Although, I've got to say, I think some of those later albums are kind of underrated. There's a maturity there, a different side of them.
That's a good point. It's funny how our view of artists can change, right? We focus on the hits, but those deeper cuts, they can tell you a lot. And who knows, maybe those albums would be seen differently if not for all the controversy surrounding him.
Makes you think about how stories, especially about famous people, how those stories can affect how we see their art. And then there's the marriages, Lisa Marie, Debbie Rowe. It always felt like people were suspicious.
For sure. Were those relationships real or just PR moves? And the sad part is he always seems so lonely, even surrounded by people.
You can hear that loneliness in his music, though. That vulnerability, that longing, it connects with people, I think. Maybe that's why his music still feels so powerful.
It's like it speaks to something universal, something beyond the fame and all that. And even in those last years, The financial problems, the legal battles, there was still that hope, that belief he could make a comeback.
That London tour, it was supposed to be his redemption, right?
Yeah.
One last shot at the top. But it just wasn't meant to be. His death at 50, it shocks the world.
Such a tragic end to a life that was, I mean, extraordinary in so many ways, but also really troubled. This essay makes you think about his legacy. The music will always be there, but the controversy, it's part of the story too.
It leaves you with this question. Can we separate the art from the artist? Or are they forever linked?
That's a question each of us has to grapple with, I think. There's no easy answer.
Man, this has been heavy. But it's important to look at the whole picture, right? It's not all just moonwalks and glitter.
Right. He was human, all the good and bad that comes with that. But he also made some of the most iconic music ever.
And that's what we got to remember. Even with the fame, the fortune, he was still a person trying to find his way, just like us.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why his music still means so much to people.
It's that desire for acceptance, for love, for something more. Maybe that's the legacy that really matters.
We'll be back in a bit with the final part of our Michael Jackson deep dive, so stick around. All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. It's been quite a journey with Michael Jackson, hasn't it? And I keep circling back to that question we left you with. Can you separate the art from the artist? Especially with Michael, whose music brought so much joy to, well, the entire world, it seems like.
Yeah, it's a question that hits hard. With an artist as huge as Michael, I mean, his music, it touched so many lives, right? People grew up with it, danced to it, were inspired by it. That impact, it's undeniable.
It really is. But then there's the other side, the allegations, the controversies, and it's tough to just, like, ignore that, you know? It's a real dilemma for fans, and honestly, I don't think there's a clear-cut answer.
The essay doesn't try to give one either. It's more like it encourages us to, I don't know, lean into the complexity of his story. See both the darkness and the light, the pain and the triumphs. Get the whole picture, you know?
It's like what we were saying before about those later albums. Sometimes you got to look past the surface, the hits, the drama, to really get an artist.
Exactly. And with Michael, I think that means recognizing he was a full human being. Good, bad, all of it.
Right? A real person, like us. And that's where the real learning happens, isn't it? When we're willing to look at those tough truths, ask the hard questions.
Totally. It's not about like condoning bad actions, but trying to understand the context, the reasons, the things that make up a whole life. That's what makes this deep dive so interesting, I think.
We're not just talking about some celebrity, we're talking about a guy who, even with all the fame and money, was still struggling to figure it out. Just like all of us, in a way.
And maybe that's the key to why his music still hits so hard. It's about those basic human needs, acceptance, love, searching for something more.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Michael Jackson, we want to leave you with this. What's your own relationship with his music?
How has it changed over time? What does it mean to you knowing all this stuff we've talked about? It's something to think about, for sure. And maybe exploring those questions, it'll help us understand not just Michael, but ourselves a little better too. Thanks for coming along with us on this one.
Keep digging. There's always more to discover, more ways to see things.
And until next time, keep diving deep.